Welcome to Overcome Yourself, the podcast, where we rewrite stories, shift mindsets, and make dreams come true. I'm your host, Nicole. Let's get into today's episode. Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. If you're watching this, if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see how crazy my hair looks, but go to social media and check out how crazy my hair looks. But welcome to the next episode. I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. And I'm very excited about our next episode with my amazing guest, Linda. Linda has an amazing track record. My high school counselor meant so much to me when I was there. And so I'm so excited to be here with you as someone that shared that profession. So I have a lot of love for you already, just in that regard. But please, Linda, take it away. Let us know a little bit about who you are and who you help.
Well, hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me on. I know that this is primarily a show for entrepreneurs starting their own business, and I've always really been in the service profession. I was a social worker, and then I was the executive director of a chapter of the American Red Cross for a number of years before I realized what my real calling was and went back to school to be a high school counselor. But it's always been service oriented, and now I'm really starting my own entrepreneurial journey in retirement as an author. I have written a book, and it's gotten, for all of the reviews that it has, are almost all 5-star reviews, and the things that people have said have really touched my heart. It's kind of hit home with more people than I really thought it would. So I wrote a book called Braving Therapy: Rape, Buried Trauma, and the Triumphant Journey Over PTSD. And I talk about my journey, being a young single woman living on my own, and being a victim and a survivor of sexual assault, burying it, moving on with my life. And then when I went back to get my counseling degree, and we were talking about counseling and therapy and all of the things that can go wrong, it triggered my PTSD, which I didn't realize I had any issues. And I went immediately into full-blown PTSD, felt like I was going crazy. And so that's the journey. The book is the journey of therapy in PTSD, for PTSD and the related depression and anxiety. But it's also a huge part of the book is my learning and perspective shifts about life and about myself and about relationships and about the way I thought about things. And so the journey was kind of long for me. I was married with 3 young boys and a husband, and it was a challenging marriage. I was working full time and attending graduate school, so life was pretty crazy. So my therapy went on probably longer than it would for a lot of people with PTSD, because I had so many contributing factors to the challenges that I was having. But probably the biggest was that there were some incidents that I was refusing to talk about. I swore I would never reveal. So the book is the journey. The book is the kind of stuff you think about that you keep hidden, and how it affects you, and the promise of what it's like when you start actually talking to people. And the really, really interesting thing, and I think why it probably applies to everybody, including all of your listeners of entrepreneurial type people, is that as I talk about it and in the reviews, I see people like professional people that are running businesses and stuff, and they're all shaking their head yes when I'm talking about the voice in your head.
Mhm.
And people write about that. People in the reviews have written about how much, like, that learning that I talk about, it would be kind of like the inner dialogue I was having, and the stuff I was revealing to myself in my own writings during therapy, that made me have perspective shifts and realize that eventually um, I was not going to be the best version of myself, the most authentic version of myself, if I couldn't be honest with myself and with other people, and if I couldn't be vulnerable. So
Mhm.
it took a long time. I have a really hard head. And
Me too.
so I think when I gave the manuscript to my therapist, and this was a long ways down the road that I wrote this after therapy, but I think that there were a lot of, oh, she is what she was ruminating about when she wasn't talking. So
Mhm. Yes.
yeah.
Um, that's beautiful. I love that. I commend you for writing a book because so many people just don't, and they have it in them and they don't do it. And so that's a big, big step that you've taken in sharing your story and being vulnerable, right? And that's what brave in today's society, Dr. Brene Brown says bravery is vulnerability. And so the fact that you were able to dig in, and you're absolutely right. I swore that I would never do video. I was like, nope. I remember I was in church. And my pastor was like, vlogging is everything. And I was like, you will never, ever, ever see me on video. I will never do that. And that's my Queen Bee content now, it's video. So I very much felt that when you said it. And I also was thinking about how it's such a common theme on this show. People who find big success, they achieve those dreams, like they make the money, they buy the house, they do the trips, and then what? Right? And so my goal is not to build a business to be the best business person that there ever was. No, that's not really what I'm interested in. My goal was to build something that would support my life, that would help me tame that inner voice, right? Because we all have that inner voice
Absolutely.
talking badly to us.
You know,
And one of the first distinctions that I had to make in my thinking is if someone else talked to me the way that that voice talks to me, would I even hang out with them? And the answer was a resounding absolutely not. Like she's mean.
you're saying so many things that resonate with me. So
Go.
in the introduction, I talk about Dr. Brene Brown, because I was justifiably really intimidated about putting my story out there. It talks about sexual assault. I talk about my sexual assault and rape. Um, I had a date rape situation that I refused to talk about because I was so humiliated. I put myself in that
Mhm.
position. I was humiliated by what happened. And I swore when I went into therapy that I would never, ever, ever talk about that. And it was years before I finally did. Um, but Brene Brown had taught in her Netflix special, The Call to Courage, I think
Mhm.
is the name of it was. She was talking about just living in the arena, the Theodore Roosevelt speech called The Man in the Arena, about just, you're going to fail, but you're going to fail spectacularly. And when you achieve your goals, it'll be spectacular too. And I was like, oh, okay. If I'm going to fail, then I might as well just do it. But I was still like so intimidated about talking to people that I might know about all of this. And she also talked, and this was a big issue with me, about the number one women's issue is feeling ashamed of their bodies. And the whole stuff, that was the whole thing with why it was so difficult for me, is the whole being ashamed of my body, like not wanting to put any visual images of me into anybody's mind because of that body shame that we do to ourselves. And I was sure other people would do it to me, and nobody has ever mentioned it in any reviews or talking to me or anything.
Mhm.
But yeah, all of that was really interesting. But what you said about negative self-talk, I really started to understand that partly when I was in my graduate program and actually did a paper on it, but also when I was working as high school counselor. And what I would see, and people shake their head at yes at this too when I talk about it, is that people who are pretty highly accomplished, who had good and involved parents, and were always trying to improve themselves, every time they get corrected as a child, start that negative dialogue of correcting themselves. And it's the stuff that you can't hear, and they continue to do it. I would see, like, some of my top students would have that negative dialogue running in their heads because they're always self-correcting. And how so
Mhm.
stupid, you're acting like a jerk, or you should have known better kind of stuff. And I did that to myself for years. Um, and have really started to understand also in watching more parenting now, where parents are being really careful in the way that they encourage and correct their small children, and how loving and accomplished those kids turn out. Because I'm retired and have lived most of my life, I've gotten to see how parents parent little children and what those children look like as adults.
Mhm.
A great position to be in. But yes, the negative self-talk has got to go. It will inhibit anybody that's trying to accomplish anything, who's listening to a podcast about the research that's been done on elite athletes. And that's the first thing that they are taught to get rid of. That if you are beating on yourself in your own
Mhm.
head, then you are not going to do nearly as well as if you build yourself up. And we can do it. So,
Yeah. And the thing about that is that we don't intentionally talk to ourselves negatively. Like I wasn't doing it intentionally.
right,
It was just it was just patterns that were repeated. Things your dad said, things your mom, I was gonna say stepmom because your aunts, your uncles, like these little offhanded comments that they don't even remember. They're like,
corrections,
what?
just corrections.
Yeah, and just corrections, but even
Yeah,
things that are not even that intentional, things that were said offhandedly, and then they're just going on. So I do have an inner monologue, and she's always talking. She always has something to say, even when your mind is blank. She's like, breathe in, breathe out. Like there's always like go do something, and she'd be like, do do do. Like there's always something. Like she can't be quiet. Like I don't know what it is. But I had to train her to think about what I wanted to think about. So like when you make a mistake, like the correction, right? Oh, you're so stupid. I can't believe you did that again. Like this is why I don't let you have nice things. Like all the things, that cost money, like all those negative things that our parents used to say to us. That's what plays.
right,
You're like, "Well, wait a second. What if I treated myself like a little kid, like a little stranger kid. Can't yell at them, you can't smack them. Like how would you treat an innocent little kid? Be like, "Oh no, we spilled some milk. What are we going to do? We're going to clean it up. Let's go get some paper towels." Having grace on ourselves, cuz you know what? Cups fall over. Like it's a fact of life. If your standard is never drop a cup, you're going to fail because
right,
because stuff
right,
happens, right? It's about learning to choose that positivity, learning to observe it, because the first thing we have to do is observe it, right? And then we can't we can't go into the shame spiral about our thoughts. Look at you thinking you're stupid again. That's why you're so stupid. Like, oh my God, this is why you're never going to get out of this. That's not going to work either. So we approach it with curiosity. So, what do you think about curiosity?
what do I think about curiosity? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, like, and approaching with questions versus just shaming, right? That's what it is.
So
Curiosity
to me,
versus shame.
so funny that you say that, Nicole, because as a counselor and helper type of person, and I have to say that I was one of those lucky people that knew what my purpose in life was from the time that I was a teenager. I felt very blessed. I have a wonderful family, um, but I felt like I knew that I was lucky, it was unusual. Not everybody had that, and that a lot of people struggled. And I really wanted to even the playing field. I wanted to help people, and that's really been my purpose. When I finally got into school counseling. That was the. I'm already losing my train of thought. You asked me. You just asked me a question.
It's okay, go for it. Keep going. Tell us the story.
Well, no, I knew what my purpose in life was, um, but I think the question that you were asking was
Curiosity
about
versus shame.
curiosity, and I find that I am very curious about what makes other people tick.
Mhm.
Like, I am all the time thinking about that, thinking about if I'm in a position to help them, looking at things from their perspective. I I'm much tougher on myself still. I have really changed my inner dialogue, but I don't find that I ask those questions of myself as much as I should. I mean, I like that you just brought that up um, because I should give myself the same grace I give other people. I give a lot of
Yeah.
I give a lot of people passes because I'm always looking at their situation and how they came to that, and you know I'll give a lot of people passes that maybe they don't always deserve, but I will manufacture a reason why they probably did something. I would never do that for myself, and I probably should ask myself. I should be more curious about myself.
Yes, I love that. Good. Okay. I love that came to you in this conversation because you should like we don't should. We don't like to should all over ourselves, right? So it is a good thing to think about, to look
Right.
into. And and just remember you are that inner kid, like you are your inner child. You just like got a little bit taller and you have to act like a responsible adult, but deep down inside you're still that inner child. And yeah, and she wants some grace. So like of course. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So I think in uh, in reference to a lot of people who probably listen to your podcast who are, trying to build their businesses, be successful in that space. I was thinking about this, like, what could I bring to them? Because for me, my book and what I really talk about is overcoming trauma, um, and being brave enough to talk about it. But then I was thinking what everybody has said about it, which is just it seems to apply to how everybody operates. And the big thing is that people don't talk to other people when they should be. And I would say that for anyone, if you're trying to prove something to someone, whatever your whatever's driving you, the reason that you want to be successful, uh, that there is a place for really sharing what's going on in your head, even when it's chaotic. And and life isn't meant to be easy. Life is messy, and when we start feeling down, things get even more chaotic in our heads, which makes it even harder to talk about. But that's just so vital to our success in life. And you were talking in another podcast about joy, and just feeling that joy about life and satisfaction. Joy will go away if you are holding on to too much negative garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And finding
Yes.
someone that you can talk, that you can talk to things about, talk about things. And it isn't always somebody that you're close to. I have a lady who doesn't know personally any of my family or anything, lives in my neighborhood, and I go have coffee with her. I can spill stuff with her that I don't talk about with the dearest people in my life, because it doesn't matter. It's like the stranger on a plane kind of thing. But find somebody that you can just sit down and spill it to, because it feels so much better to get it out of your body.
Yes, that's so true. And to your point, something that I talk about in my book is what is in you is what's going to overflow out of you. And so we have to be intentional about focusing on gratitude, practicing gratitude to keep ourselves in joy, to keep joy as a perspective. Understanding things will go wrong, storms will happen, hurricanes will come, but the sun will come out on the other side of that. Like I'm in Miami, and so every single hurricane, no matter how bad it is, no matter how long it takes to pass over us, after it's done, the
Sun
sun
is
comes out again, and we can start rebuilding, and everything is just, you appreciated that just that much more. You're like, oh, that tree survived. Oh, I like that tree.
yeah,
Or, oh, that tree fell down. You know what? I didn't like that tree anyway, you know?
yeah. What you talk about with gratitude and joy, it's funny because I talk a lot about gratitude in my book. Um, it was during my dark period, which was about 5 years. I couldn't feel joy. I didn't feel grateful, and gratitude. It was an actual moment where it just washed over me
Wow.
in the last 8 to 10 years, and so I talk a lot about that, and we talk about it a lot when I'm doing book talks or with my friends. And somebody said to me, a friend of mine said to me something about gratitude being an emotion, and I really stopped and thought about that, and I said, gratitude is a state of being. It's not an emotion. Like I have struggled for the last 3 weeks with just life has gotten very heavy for me. Just you know overwhelming, too much, and lots of things for me to be sad about. And thinking about it, I was like, I still feel grateful. I'm still grateful,
Mhm.
even when things are hard, and even my emotions are low. But um, being able to look around, and I'll tell you what it is that I felt gratitude wash over me. Is for a long time I kept feeling like I wanted more, like build a house and immediately I wanted to add a room to it. I wanted to
Mhm.
fix up this, wanted to buy something, wanted to do something, wanted to go somewhere, because I felt like I would feel better if I was somewhere else or doing something else. And we have my husband, and my husband is gone now. He's passed away. But it was probably 7 or 8 years ago, and we had bought a like shabby little cottage next to the water, so on a lake. And I was sitting out, the weather was warm and the water was calm, and I was sitting under a tree, and I just all of a sudden realized that the nature that I was sitting in was enough. And I was so lucky to have nature. And I was so grateful about it. And I came in and I just said to him, I just feel so grateful. And we had this conversation, and he's like, well, you've worked really hard. You deserve it. And I said, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's like, I don't want anything else but the warm air and to be able to look out at the water, and to just know that I'm enough, and this is enough. I don't need anything else. And my husband became sick 4 years ago with cancer, very aggressive cancer, and he died very quickly. And I was expecting that depression would return and that I would be struggling, but I never stopped feeling grateful for having that man in my life. And I have never lost that feeling of gratitude once I think I started looking at all that life gives us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the power.
Yeah.
That's the power of gratitude. And I talk about it in my book. I'm very sorry for your loss, by the way. Um, Joy, I call joy the perspective, the state of being. It's not, right? It's not an emotion. It's so much more
Right.
than that. And I talk about how we we need to take time to practice when things are going good, so that we have it when the storms hit. So like in your case, it would be very easy to spiral into depression, but if you can stay focused on everything, there's a whole life to be grateful for, right? And you were able to stay focused on that, and it still hurts. It's not that it doesn't hurt, it still hurts, and I'm sure you can attest to that, but it doesn't break you.
You know what, Nicole? I have come to realize, and I was in, it was 25 to 20 years ago, that period of intense therapy. So I didn't write this book until after I had retired. Um, but I realized when I was in therapy, like one of the mantras that you hear people, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. And I had that mantra going in my head, going, I am growing here. This really, really hard thing, the hardest thing I've ever done, is I'm really growing. And I've since come to understand, and I think about it in a spiritual perspective as well, that life is, we're here to do hard things, that life is not meant to hand us just a good or happy time. That I look at life spiritually as this grand adventure that we get to have, but that it's hard. And that's where we learn and grow into, hopefully, um, more evolved spiritual people, or just more evolved people, whatever your spiritual perspective is, or perspective on life. That um, the hard stuff is what helps us to grow.
Yes. Okay, I found a quote. John Maxwell. The very element that offers resistance to flying is at the same time the condition for flight. If everything is hunky dory all the time, we wouldn't enjoy it as much, right? We need the bad times, unfortunately. In our flawed human perspective, the hard times is not that we need them, but that's what helps us really enjoy the good times, right?
Well, that's the whole dopamine hit. There's this
Yeah.
great book, um, a great book. I think it's called Dopamine Nation. And it talks about the fact that you don't get the dopamine hits without the pain first. Like
Interesting.
oh, it was a fascinating book. It was actually written by a Stanford psychiatrist, and it was so, I call it heady, but it was so intellectual that it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to read this again to be able to absorb the depth
Yes.
of what she was saying. But she was explaining that you cannot really have a dopamine hit, which is like that, those happiness chemicals, without having the pain first. It's like the people that take the ice baths because it feels so good when you get out. It's like,
Interesting.
yeah, it's like you have to have the pain in order to have the pleasure. So what you're saying is exactly that. And I think that the difficulties and what we learn in them is also in the perspective shifts, right? Um, and one of the things I talk about, I say it a few times in my book, I did a lot of journaling especially through therapy. I was very honest with myself in journaling, but I only had my own perspective. If you don't share what you're thinking about, what's going on in your head and the way you're seeing things, you have nobody's perspective but your own. And a lot of times that is not helping. The more perspective you can get on things, the better off it's going to be. As an entrepreneur, the more people that you bring in to get perspective, the better off you're going to be.
Love that. And that's a perfect lead in because you were mentioning that you had a very special gift for the audience. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think this is a perfect transition into like, well, how do I find this team of people? One of the people that you need on that team, I tell this to my clients, I tell everybody, you need a coach, right? Like the coach is going to help you with your business stuff. Like I can help you map out funnels. I can help you with marketing. I can help you like with future planning, but I'm not a therapist. Another essential component of your team is going to be a therapist. There's a lot of other ones. Got an acting coach, got an ADHD coach. Like I got all the coaches, right? But talk to us a little bit about finding that therapist. Because I think you mentioned something that your resource had something to do with that. So talk to us a little bit about that, please.
Right. I have, if you contact me, and it's coming up, it's just, if you contact me, I have a list of resources to help get you to a point where you can find yourself the therapist that's right for you. So it includes, this stuff is several chapters in my book as well, but I broke it down and just bullet pointed it so you can take it and use it. It talks about the myths about therapy and also the obstacles that we throw up for ourselves about why we don't want to find a therapist. And it talks about those and about how, a different perspective to overcome those objections. There is a resource sheet of where you would want to look to find a therapist, the kind of questions you want to ask and things you want to consider when you do find, and as you're talking to different potential therapists, to decide who you actually want to go see. And then there is a list of resources mostly related to PTSD, depression, anxiety, and they are all vetted. They're mostly from the VA because they are the researched ones. There are a lot of apps out there, and I have used and looked at some of them, but the ones that I put in this gift that I have are the ones that are through the VA because they are all vetted and because they're not, you know what they're doing with your information. They don't collect what they don't need. But
that's very important.
Really, the PTSD app, when I've found myself starting to dissociate, which almost never happens, but somebody asked me a very triggering question at one time, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I was in a conversation and I just stopped. I said, give me a minute. And I looked on my app. It gave me like a technique, and I was like, okay. I went through like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and I was like, okay, answer your question now.
No, but that's so important and that's so helpful because there are so many apps for all of these things.
Yeah.
And so having a resource that, like you said, that somebody has compiled for you, that's going to save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of frustration on trying to find the right one. And can you mention the name of your book again for us?
The book is Braving Therapy. That's BRAVING, because you have to be brave and you have to stick it through to the end.
Yes.
So
yes, absolutely.
Therapy, rape, buried trauma, and the triumphant journey over PTSD. And as I can say that now, it applies to a lot more people than people who have struggled with PTSD or severe trauma. So a lot of learning and growing in there.
And you know what? That's the beautiful thing about niching down is when you are really good in your niche, other people who are not in your niche are going to be like, "Hey, I need that too." So that's a beautiful lesson in that as well. Amazing. So signing off, can you tell us? We want to know big juicy tip. Like, what is like the biggest aha moment that you give your clients, or what's the best tip from your book?
Uh, you need to talk to somebody. You need to. I know this now. When I start beating myself up or feeling down, I have got to talk. I know that, and I think the other thing is to really think about how you're looking at things. It's in our nature. It's a protective factor to see the problems and to look at the dangers and to be defensive. That's that's a protective thing that we have developed genetically from time immemorial. However, to be grateful, you have to understand that there's also all of the beautiful things that are coming at you as positives in your life. And you can choose to focus on the good stuff instead of the scary stuff, because the scary stuff, a lot of times, you're blowing up in your head. It's
Mm-hmm.
not really as bad as what you're making it. But if you start looking at the good stuff, life gets a whole lot better.
Yes. And it's just a change, like the glasses from National Treasure, right? Like you literally just change out a lens and you're looking at the same thing, you're just seeing something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so you don't even have to change the whole scene. It's just about changing that perspective. I love that so much. That is so important. This has been a fantastic, amazing, wonderful episode. Thank you so much, Linda, for being here with us
It's
and
been
for sharing. Yes, and for sharing your story. And we will catch you guys next time on the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. Bye.
bye. Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning in to Overcome Yourself, the podcast. Stay bold, stay grateful, and keep becoming your best you. For more information and resources from me, Nicole, head over to nicoletexberry.com/resources. See you next time.